I'm Tavis Smiley. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580. Our phone number 1-800-920-1580. So pleased to be joined live in studio this hour by the former chief of police for the city of Los Angeles, Bernard Parks, who was denied a second 5-year term by Rick Caruso, who was then the chair of the LA Police Commission. Rick Caruso running for mayor now, and the LA Times has opened up a can of worms, as it were, about what really happened in 2002 when this white billionaire businessman running the police commission pushed out the black chief of police. And so, Bernard Parks, let me just ask you point blank, what do you think about, or not think about, as it were, Rick Caruso? He wants to be mayor. Does he deserve to be mayor of this city?
I don't think so. I think the issues that we need to look at, and an article came out since we wrote our document, guy missed 40% of the meetings at the commission. And what was his explanation? Well, I talked to Bratton and he said it was okay. Well, who's overseeing who? There's at least 10 scandals going on at SC today.
USC, where he's been chair of the board.
Chair of the board.
Exactly.
So how do you ignore that if you can't fix a private university where the money's unlimited and with all the donors you have? If you can't fix that, how are you going to fix the city of LA?
Yeah.
And then I'm always fearful of people who believe that says I'm the only one that can do it, and yet they've never done it. And you hear things such as, I'm going to put 1,500 people on the police department. If you come up with a figure about $15 million per 100, that's a lot of money. And you say, well, I'm going to find it in overages and misuse of funds. There's not that much overage and misuse of funds because 45 to 50% of the city's budget is police fire. And the next thing you look at, the other personnel, the bulk. When you have to pay all your bills, you don't have $1 billion of discretionary funds to spend.
Does the city, I'm thinking of my friend Melina Abdullah now from Black Lives Matter, who hosts a program here every Saturday and Sunday called This Is Not a Drill. And I know Melina's answer to this question, but let me just ask you as former chief of police. You mentioned earlier that you think policing in this city is regressing. Policing in LA is getting worse, and that's from a former chief of police in the city. But do we need more officers? He wants to put 1,500 more officers on the street. Do we need more cops in LA?
I think you need to evaluate, first of all, and it's one of those tough decisions that no one wants to make. If you merely change them from a 3 to 4 day work week to a 5-day work week, you can get 20 to 25% more police cars on the street today. But you're not going to do it because the union would object. And even though every major city that implemented this 3-day work week has gotten away from it because they found it didn't work, City of LA is the last dinosaur that says we can't want to move it. So if you're not prepared to make tough decisions, then you're in the wrong business. And if you go back and look at what Caruso did as the commissioner, what did they do? They basically softened up the discipline system. They also ended up with a situation that stop and frisk went unnoticed for X number of years. A report comes out recently, 8 consecutive years LAPD falsified his crime stats, but yet he's taking credit for a 30% reduction in crime, in which nobody can figure what he did to get a 30% reduction in crime.
Are you afraid or concerned that Rick Caruso, if he were mayor, would be too cozy with police and the police union?
Oh, no doubt. The thing is that if you watch 2 of the large decisions he's made in life, when Mayor Hahn got the police union endorsement, all of a sudden the department was us and they needed a new chief of police. Just recently, he was a full supporter of George Gascon as the DA. The minute he got the police endorsement, he funded the recall. Now, it doesn't take a genius to put those dots together, except you find out that he is not one that basically has been, when he claims he's a leader, just think of what happened at the debate recently when they said, are you going to give up your tax returns? What was his answer? He didn't say yes right away. He said, yeah, if they do it. So he's following the leader. And then he turns around and gives them a sheet that says, oh, I really meant I'm going to give you my tax that I paid, which doesn't tell the story. So he's not a person that's been consistent. He's not been a person that has been trustworthy. And I don't think he's going to change just because he's been given more power.
So you don't think Rick Caruso can be trusted?
I think so. I think when you look at his life, it's almost all self-interest. You go back and just a young lady that's the supervisor in Ventura, just recently in an article says he putting him in charge of the city of LA and land use is like putting the fox in the hen house. Because when you go back and you look at the entitlements he received just to open the Grove, when you go in these different places, he basically has used the local government as a piggy bank, even though he touts that he's a billionaire. And I think the issue is you can't afford to have people in these times in short money taking advantage or filling their pockets. We see what happened on the federal level with the guy that said my self-interest is better than your interest.
So you think that what Donald Trump did or didn't do as president is both instructive and informative for how we ought to view Rick Caruso. I think I hear you saying that, and I think the point you're making is, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong here, what I'm hearing you say is that we need to be leery of these businessmen, these billionaires who say, I can do it better than anybody else can, and you need me to run and to save the city. So I hear you drawing a parallel between Donald Trump and Rick Caruso. Am I hearing that correctly?
Very much so. And the issue is that just because you were successful in business, and we don't quite know how you became successful, but on the other hand, they do things a lot differently than government. And the thing that when you hear people say, I'm just going to do this, you're losing sight of the fact that everything you do has to have at least 8 votes. So what you think is waste or loss might be somebody's pet project. So you just don't get to walk in and say, I'm going to do this and rearrange the budget, because at the end, the final say of the budget, I was a chair for like 10 years, 8 to 10 votes at the council.
Let me ask you specifically how you think black voters should consider voting for Caruso or Karen Bass. So specifically with African-American voters, how should we view filling out our ballot for Caruso versus Karen Bass?
I think we should do an analysis and figure out who's been there for us, who has a track record for us, who shows up to events and then needs MapQuest to figure out how to get to your place. These are things you have to look at. And the fact is, just because you put pictures of black people on your web page and none in your business is not an indication that you are sympathetic to the issues. And you know, when you figure out, when you get to be a billionaire, there's a lot of things you lose sight of on data. And when you think about what people are struggling to do and how they're doing, and you just decide I'm going to pick a nonprofit in the black community, well, how recent is that? And how long have you dealt with it? That ad that says I give 20% to families, disadvantaged families. No one knows if that's true. No one knows who those families are. And so we have a tendency to say, use words with no definition and with no substance. And that's why when the report we put out, we specifically put footnotes so you and others don't have to guess whether we just made that up. You can actually go to the document and say, that's what it says.
You're talking now about your 12-page statement that you put out that has footnotes attached to it so people can see when they read your statement where you got this data from. I take all that you've just said, I take all that to mean that you probably ain't going to be voting for Rick Caruso.
No, I don't. I think that would be.
You probably ain't going to be voting for Rick Caruso.
No, I don't. I think that would be a major inconsistency.
Yeah.
And I do live with consistency.
Yeah.
I mean, so the thing is that I don't think you say one thing and do another. I think you have to live by your values and your principles. If you don't have principles and stand for something, then you have nothing.
And what do you say to people who are listening right now who say, of course Bernard Parks ain't going to vote for Rick Caruso. Of course he doesn't like Rick Caruso. Rick Caruso denied him a second term as chief of police. So it's all, sour grapes.
Well, I think if anyone says that, then they need to look at the footnotes and say, those things aren't what Bernard Parks said. That's what came out in other people's studies.